Imagine waking up one morning to find your entire life savings gone. Not stolen by a burglar who broke into your home, but taken by someone thousands of miles away who you trusted to help you. This is the reality for thousands of Americans every single day, and what you're about to hear will shake you to your core. Before we dive into this devastating story, please consider subscribing. These scam tactics are evolving every single week, and staying informed could save you or someone you love from financial ruin. The person we're focusing on today initially seemed like just another victim. Someone calling himself Randy Savage contacted what he thought was Cash App customer service about a missing transaction. Like many Americans, Randy appeared to be simply trying to resolve a banking issue with his cash transfer app. What started as what seemed like a routine customer service call turned into something completely unexpected that reveals both the dark underbelly of international fraud operations and the heroes fighting back against them. Randy's story begins on what seemed like an ordinary day. He had transferred money through his Cash App, but when he checked his bank account, the transaction wasn't showing up. This is a common occurrence that most of us have experienced at some point. Transfers sometimes take time, systems have delays, and usually everything works out fine. But Randy decided to be proactive and call customer service to check on his transaction. This is where what appeared to be Randy's nightmare began. The voice on the other end belonged to someone calling himself Max Davis. Max spoke with confidence and authority, presenting himself as a Cash App customer service representative. To anyone listening, this would seem completely normal. The number appeared legitimate, and Max knew exactly what to say to gain trust. What neither Randy nor we initially realised was that Max Davis was not an employee of any legitimate company. Max was part of an organised criminal network operating out of call centres, primarily in India, specifically targeting American citizens. These operations are massive, employing hundreds of people whose sole job is to steal money from hardworking Americans. These call centres operate like legitimate businesses in many ways. They have managers, training programs, quotas, and even employee handbooks. But instead of providing real customer service, they're teaching people how to manipulate and steal from innocent victims. The sophistication of these operations is truly frightening. The scammers are given detailed scripts to follow, complete with responses to common objections and questions. They're trained in American culture and slang to sound more believable. Some even practice American accents to better deceive their targets.
Thank you for calling Cash App. You're speaking with Max Davis. How can I help you?
The level of preparation that goes into these criminal enterprises is both impressive and terrifying. Max immediately began his practiced routine. He asked Randy for personal information under the guise of verifying his account. Randy's phone number, his name, details about his device. Each piece of information Randy provided seemed like another tool that Max could use against him. The psychological manipulation began immediately. Max positioned himself as helpful and knowledgeable, someone who could solve Randy's problem quickly and efficiently. This is a classic technique used by scammers worldwide. They create a sense of urgency and dependency, making their victims feel like they need the scammer's help to resolve their issues. The way these scammers build rapport with their victims is calculated and cruel. They ask about your day, make small talk, and create a false sense of friendship. They want you to like them and trust them before they begin stealing from you. It's a betrayal of the most basic human instincts to help and trust others. Max then made a critical request that should have been a red flag to any real victim. He asked Randy to download an application called TeamViewer Quick Support. For those unfamiliar, TeamViewer is legitimate software that allows someone to remotely access your computer or phone. In legitimate circumstances, tech support companies use this to help customers with computer problems. But in the wrong hands, TeamViewer becomes a weapon. Once installed, it gives the scammer complete control over your device. They can see everything you see, access all your files, view your banking information, and even control your mouse and keyboard. It's like handing over the keys to your entire digital life. The horror of what happens once a scammer gains remote access cannot be overstated. They can open your banking applications, transfer money out of your accounts, access your email to reset passwords, and even lock you out of your own device. Victims often watch helplessly as their life savings disappear before their eyes. Randy, appearing to trust that he was speaking with a legitimate customer service representative, began following Max's instructions. He went to his phone's app store and started searching for the application. This seemed like the moment when Randy was standing at the edge of a financial cliff, completely unaware of the danger he was in. The psychological impact of what appears to be happening to victims like Randy cannot be overstated. Like millions of Americans, people work hard for their money. Randy mentioned working at a paper mill, an honest job that requires physical labor and dedication. For real victims, the money in their accounts represents hours of work, sacrifice, and planning for the future. Every dollar is earned through sweat and effort. Paper mill work is demanding and often dangerous. Workers face extreme temperatures, heavy machinery, and chemical exposure. The wages earned in these jobs represent not just time, but physical risk and sacrifice. When scammers target workers in these industries, They're stealing the fruits of genuine labour and putting families at risk. For many victims of these scams, the money stolen isn't just spending money. It's rent payments, mortgage funds, money set aside for medical bills, children's education funds, or retirement savings. When scammers steal this money, they're not just taking cash. They're stealing security, peace of mind, and hope for the future. The emotional toll on victims is devastating. Many experience shame and embarrassment, feeling foolish for falling for the scam. They often blame themselves, wondering how they could have been so naive. Depression and anxiety are common, especially among elderly victims who may not have the ability to recover financially from such losses. Studies have shown that scam victims often suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, similar to victims of violent crimes. The violation of trust and the sudden loss of financial security can be just as traumatic as physical assault. Many victims report trouble sleeping, difficulty concentrating, and persistent anxiety about financial security. The ripple effects of these scams extend far beyond the immediate victim. Spouses lose trust in their partner's judgment. Children worry about their parents' financial security. Extended families often feel obligated to provide financial support to help victims recover, straining relationships and resources. But Randy's story was about to take an unexpected turn. And this is where our story becomes not just about victimization, but about justice and resistance in ways we never could have imagined. Unknown to Max, Randy was not actually a typical victim at all. The person Max thought he was manipulating was actually someone with extensive knowledge of these scam operations. But Randy Savage wasn't even his real identity. The person on this call was actually Pierogi, a professional scam baiter and ethical hacker who dedicates his life to exposing and disrupting these criminal operations. Pierogi was deliberately wasting Max's time, using techniques that expert scam baiters employ to frustrate and expose these criminals. Every minute a scammer spends with someone like Pierogi is a minute they're not stealing from a real victim. Scam baiting is a practice where knowledgeable individuals pretend to be potential victims, leading scammers through elaborate scenarios designed to waste their time and resources. But Pierogi takes this to another level entirely. He's not just wasting time, he's gathering intelligence, documenting criminal activity, and sometimes even gaining access to the scammer's own computer systems. The art of professional scam baiting requires incredible skill and knowledge. Practitioners like Pierogi must understand how various scams work, be able to improvise convincingly under pressure, and maintain their cover while gathering evidence of criminal activity. It's dangerous work that requires both technical expertise and psychological insight. Pierogi has spent years studying these criminal operations. He understands their psychology, their techniques, and their weaknesses. When he takes on the persona of Randy Savage or any other character, he's not just playing a role, he's conducting a sophisticated intelligence operation. As the call progressed, Pierogi began throwing obstacles in Max's path. When Max wanted him to use his phone, Pierogi insisted on using his computer instead.
Are you using it on your computer?
Yeah, I'm on my computer doing it.
Oh, no, not on your computer, sir. I asked you to do it on your phone.
When Max asked for specific actions, Pierogi created technical difficulties and confusion. This wasn't accidental. Pierogi was systematically disrupting Max's carefully planned script.
How would I know why? Why are you asking me silly questions, sir?
The genius of what Pierogi was doing becomes clear when you understand how these scam operations work. The people making the initial calls, like Max, are often low-level employees who are given scripts to follow. They're trained to handle common objections and problems, but when something unexpected happens, they often don't know how to respond. These call center operations are highly structured and monitored. Scammers have supervisors listening to their calls, quotas to meet, and specific targets for how much money they need to steal each day. When a call goes off script, it creates problems throughout their entire system. Max became increasingly frustrated as Pierogi continued to create problems. The smooth, confident customer service representative began to crack under pressure. This is exactly what skilled scam baiters like Pierogi aim to achieve. They want to break the scammer's rhythm and expose their true nature. The financial impact of these scam operations on American families is staggering. According to recent data, Americans lose billions of dollars annually to phone and internet scams. The Federal Trade Commission reports that consumers lost over $4 billion to fraud in recent years, with phone scams representing a significant portion of these losses. But the numbers only tell part of the story. Behind each statistic is a family devastated by financial loss. Elderly couples who lose their life savings and can't afford their medications. Young families who have their down payment for a house stolen. Students who lose money set aside for education. The human cost is immeasurable. Consider the story of Margaret, a 73-year-old widow from Ohio who lost her entire retirement fund of $60,000 to a similar scam. She had worked as a school teacher for 40 years, saving every penny she could for her golden years. The money was supposed to last her the rest of her life. Now she works part-time at a grocery store just to pay for basic necessities. Or think about James and Sarah, a young couple from Texas who lost the $15,000 they had saved for a down payment on their first home. They had both worked second jobs for 3 years to save that money. The loss didn't just cost them their house deposit. It destroyed their dreams and put enormous strain on their marriage. These scam operations specifically target vulnerable populations. Elderly Americans are prime targets because scammers believe they are less tech-savvy and more trusting of authority figures. People going through financial difficulties are targeted because they're more likely to be desperate for solutions. Non-native English speakers are targeted because language barriers can make it harder to recognize scam tactics. The targeting of elderly Americans is particularly cruel. Many seniors grew up in an era when a handshake was binding and people could be trusted at their word. But the idea that someone would call pretending to help while actually planning to steal is foreign to many older Americans. Scammers exploit this generational difference in trust and skepticism. The international nature of these crimes makes them particularly difficult to prosecute. Most of these operations are based in countries where law enforcement cooperation is limited. Even when scammers are identified, bringing them to justice across international borders is extremely challenging. Indian law enforcement has made some efforts to crack down on these operations, but the scale of the problem is enormous. Entire buildings house thousands of scammers making calls to American victims 24 hours a day. The profits are so large that new operations spring up faster than old ones can be shut down. This is why the work that people like Pierogi do is so important. Since law enforcement faces significant challenges in stopping these operations, individual resistance becomes crucial. Every scammer who is frustrated and exposed is one less criminal successfully stealing from innocent people. The psychological warfare between Pierogi and Max intensified as the call continued. Pierogi skillfully maintained his act of being a confused customer, while actually controlling the entire interaction. He asked questions that seemed innocent, but were actually designed to waste Max's time and gather information about the scam operation. Pierogi pretended to have technical difficulties with his computer, claimed his phone speaker wasn't working, and generally made Max's job as difficult as possible.
That's what I'm asking from the last 15 minutes. Do one thing. Put me on speakerphone and open App Store in your phone.
Each obstacle forced Max to spend more time on the call, while getting no closer to accessing what he thought were Randy's accounts or devices. The brilliance of Pierogi's approach was in how realistic it seemed. Real customers do have technical problems, do get confused by instructions, and do ask questions. By staying within the bounds of believable customer behavior, Pierogi avoided raising Max's suspicions while still disrupting the scam. Meanwhile, Max was becoming increasingly impatient. The professional facade was starting to crack as the call dragged on without progress. You could hear the frustration building in his voice as he realized this customer was more difficult than usual. From Max's perspective, this was supposed to be easy money.
Hey, listen, fucker. Don't play around. Okay?
Excuse me? What are you calling me?
Yeah.
Probably expected to have remote access to Randy's device within the first few minutes of the call. Instead, he was spending valuable time dealing with what seemed like an incredibly difficult and technically challenged customer. The pressure these scammers face from their supervisors is intense. They're expected to successfully scam a certain number of victims each day and steal specific amounts of money. When calls like this one waste their time, it puts their job and income at risk. As Pierogi continued to frustrate Max's efforts, the scammer began making mistakes. He started rushing through his script, skipping important steps, and making demands that revealed the true nature of his intentions. These mistakes are exactly what expert scam baiters like Pierogi hope to provoke. But Pierogi wasn't just wasting time, he was also working on something else entirely. While pretending to follow Max's instructions, Pierogi was actually setting up his own computer systems to potentially gain access to the scammer's network. This is where his skills as an ethical hacker come into play. The technical expertise required for this kind of counter-operation is extraordinary. Pierogi has to maintain his cover as a confused victim, while simultaneously running sophisticated computer programs designed to trace and potentially access the scammer's systems. It's like playing chess on multiple levels at once. The turning point came when Pierogi began to show signs that he understood what was really happening. After letting Max believe he was making progress, Pierogi started asking questions that revealed his knowledge of scam tactics. Pierogi began questioning why his screen had gone black, why Max needed remote access to his computer, and why the whole process seemed so complicated for what should have been a simple customer service issue. These questions put Max on the defensive and forced him to provide explanations that didn't make sense. The moment of revelation was devastating for Max. All the time and effort he had invested in this potential victim was suddenly revealed to be completely wasted. But more than that, his criminal activity was being exposed and documented by someone with the skills to potentially cause serious problems for his entire operation. Pierogi's reveal was masterful in its timing and execution. He had led Max through an elaborate charade, wasting the scammer's time and resources before finally pulling back the curtain on the entire operation.
I'm calling you a dick.
Why?
Fucker.
Why? Excuse
Because
me?
you're playing with me. You're playing games.
You watch your
You're playing
language.
games.
You watch your language, you scammer.
The psychological impact on Max was immediate and severe. When Pierogi finally revealed that he knew exactly what kind of scam was being attempted, Max's reaction was immediate and explosive. The professional demeanour completely disappeared, replaced by anger and profanity. He began cursing at Pierogi, using language that no legitimate customer service representative would ever use. This reaction perfectly demonstrated the difference between genuine customer service and criminal activity. The language Max used when his scam was exposed reveals the contempt these criminals have for their victims. They see Americans not as people, but as targets to be exploited. The anger in Max's voice wasn't just frustration at being caught. It was rage at having his criminal enterprise disrupted by someone who clearly knew what they were doing. The transformation in Max's behaviour was complete and shocking. Within seconds, he went from pretending to be helpful to hurling insults and threats. This Jekyll and Hyde transformation is typical of scammers when their true nature is exposed. But it was particularly intense because Max realised he hadn't just been caught by a random victim. He'd been completely outplayed by a professional. For real victims of these scams, this moment of realisation often comes too late. By the time they understand they've been scammed, their money is already gone, transferred to accounts they can't trace, in countries where they have no legal recourse. The recovery process for scam victims is often long and difficult. Banks and financial institutions have limited ability to recover funds once they've been transferred, especially in international scams. Many victims never recover their stolen money. The banking system, while sophisticated in many ways, has significant limitations when it comes to recovering stolen funds. Once money is transferred out of the country, especially to accounts in nations with limited cooperation agreements, recovery becomes nearly impossible. The psychological recovery can be even more challenging than the financial recovery. Victims often experience what psychologists call secondary victimization. This happens when family members, friends, or even law enforcement officers question how the victim could have fallen for the scam. This blame and judgment compounds the trauma of the original crime. Many victims report feeling stupid or embarrassed about being scammed. They withdraw from social activities and become isolated. Some develop trust issues that affect all their relationships. The psychological scars can last much longer than the financial impact. Support systems for scam victims are improving, but they're still inadequate for the scale of the problem. Many victims suffer in silence, ashamed to admit they were scammed and afraid of being judged by others. Organisations like AARP and the Better Business Bureau have developed resources for scam victims, but awareness of these resources is limited. Many victims don't know where to turn for help and support during their recovery. The work being done by professional scambaiters like Pierogi represents a form of digital vigilante justice. Since traditional law enforcement faces significant challenges in stopping these international criminal operations, individuals with the right skills are taking matters into their own hands. Pierogi's approach goes far beyond simple scam baiting. He combines the time-wasting techniques of traditional scambaiters with the sophisticated technical skills of an ethical hacker. This dual approach makes him particularly effective at disrupting these criminal operations. The impact of successful operations like Pierogi's extends beyond just wasting one scammer's time. When calls like this are recorded and shared publicly, they serve as education for potential victims. People can hear exactly how these scams work, making them less likely to fall for similar tactics in the future. The educational value of these recordings cannot be overstated. Hearing an actual scam in progress is far more effective than reading about scam tactics in abstract terms. When people hear how convincing these scammers can be, they're more likely to be skeptical of similar calls. The documentation of these scam calls also provides valuable information to law enforcement agencies working to understand and combat these criminal operations. Even if individual scammers can't be prosecuted, the intelligence gathered helps build a bigger picture of how these operations work. Law enforcement agencies are beginning to recognize the value of the work done by ethical hackers like Pierogi. While they can't officially endorse vigilante activities, they acknowledge that professionals like Pierogi provide valuable intelligence and disruption of criminal operations. The technology being used in these scams is constantly evolving. Scammers are using more sophisticated techniques to appear legitimate, including spoofing legitimate phone numbers and creating fake websites that look identical to real companies. Phone number spoofing has become incredibly sophisticated. Scammers can make their calls appear to come from legitimate businesses, government agencies, or even local phone numbers. This technology makes it almost impossible for victims to identify scam calls based on caller ID alone. The TeamViewer software that Max wanted Pierogi to install is just one example of legitimate technology being weaponized by criminals. Voice over Internet Protocol technology allows scammers to make calls that appear to come from local numbers. Fake websites can capture login credentials and personal information. As technology advances, scammers are finding new ways to exploit it. Artificial intelligence is being used to create more convincing fake voices and even fake video calls. The arms race between scammers and those trying to stop them is constantly escalating. Some scam operations are now using artificial intelligence to analyze potential victims' social media profiles and tailor their approaches accordingly. They can reference personal information gleaned from Facebook or LinkedIn to make their scams more believable. But experts like Pierogi are keeping pace with these technological advances. They're developing new tools and techniques to identify, track, and disrupt scammer operations. It's a constant battle of innovation on both sides. Education remains one of the most effective defenses against these scams. The more people understand how these operations work, the less likely they are to become victims. This is why sharing stories like Pierogi's work is so important. The key warning signs of these scams are consistent across different variations. Unsolicited calls from people claiming to represent legitimate companies, requests to download software or provide remote access to devices, urgency and pressure tactics designed to prevent victims from thinking clearly or consulting with others. One of the most important things people can learn is that legitimate companies rarely call customers unsolicited to resolve account issues. If you receive such a call, the safest approach is to hang up and call the company directly using a number from your account statements or their official website. Financial institutions and technology companies are also working to combat these scams. Banks are implementing additional security measures and monitoring systems to detect fraudulent activity. Technology companies are developing better tools to identify and block scam calls. Many banks now have sophisticated monitoring systems that can detect unusual account activity and automatically freeze accounts or block suspicious transactions. These systems have prevented countless victims from losing their money to scammers. Phone companies are implementing new technologies to identify and block scam calls before they reach consumers. While these systems aren't perfect, they're becoming more effective at reducing the number of scam calls that get through. But the ultimate responsibility lies with individuals to protect themselves and their loved ones. This means staying informed about current scam tactics, being skeptical of unsolicited contact, and never giving remote access to devices or accounts to unknown individuals. The most important piece of advice for anyone who receives a suspicious call is simple: hang up. No legitimate business will be offended if you hang up and call them back directly. Taking that extra step can save you thousands of dollars and enormous heartache. The international cooperation needed to effectively combat these scams is slowly improving. Law enforcement agencies are sharing information more effectively, and some countries are taking stronger action against scam operations within their borders. However, the financial incentives for these criminal operations remain enormous, with relatively low risk of prosecution and potentially huge financial rewards. These scams continue to proliferate. The human cost of these crimes extends beyond the immediate victims. Families are torn apart when trust is broken and financial security is destroyed. Communities lose resources that could have been invested in local businesses and services. The entire economy suffers when billions of dollars are transferred to criminal organizations overseas. Pierogi's successful disruption of Max's scam represents a small victory in a much larger war. Every scammer who's exposed and frustrated is a win for potential victims everywhere. The courage required to engage with these criminals, even for the purpose of exposing them, should not be underestimated. Pierogi puts himself at risk to protect others, using his knowledge and skills to fight back against criminal activity. Professional scam baiting isn't without risks. Scammers have been known to retaliate against people who waste their time or expose their operations. They might attempt to hack the baiters' accounts or share their personal information with other criminals. For someone with Pierogi's technical skills, these risks are somewhat mitigated, but they still exist. The recording of this call serves as both entertainment and education. While it's satisfying to hear a scammer get frustrated and exposed, the real value is in understanding exactly how these operations work and seeing how someone with the right skills can turn the tables on these criminals. For anyone who has been victimized by similar scams, Pierogi's success provides a sense of justice and hope. It shows that these criminals are not invincible, and that their operations can be disrupted and exposed by people with the right knowledge and determination. The psychological impact of having their scam exposed was clearly devastating for Max. His professional facade completely collapsed, revealing the criminal underneath. This kind of exposure is exactly what these operations fear most, being outplayed by someone who understands their game better than they do. Moving forward, the fight against these scams requires continued vigilance and education. Technology will continue to evolve, and scammers will find new ways to exploit it. But professionals like Pierogi are proving that human awareness, technical skill, and determination remain our best defenses. The story of Pierogi and Max is ultimately a story about the power of knowledge and preparation. Pierogi's success came from understanding how these scams work and being prepared to turn the tables on the criminal with superior technical skills and psychological insight. For all of us, the lesson is clear: stay informed, stay skeptical, and never hesitate to hang up on suspicious calls. Remember that legitimate companies rarely ask for remote access to your devices or pressure you to act immediately. While most of us don't have the technical skills that Pierogi possesses, we can all contribute to the fight against these scams by staying educated, sharing information with vulnerable friends and family members, and supporting the work of ethical hackers and scam baiters who dedicate their time to protecting innocent people. The fight against these international criminal operations is far from over, but stories like this one give us hope that justice can prevail, even in the digital age. Every person who refuses to become a victim, every scammer who is exposed and frustrated, Every call that ends with the criminal being revealed makes our communities safer. The courage and skill demonstrated by Pierogi in this call represents the best of human ingenuity and determination. In a world where criminals use technology to exploit and harm others, professionals like Pierogi use the same technology to fight back and protect potential victims. This is more than just a story about one successful scambait. It's a reminder that we all have the power to fight back against these criminals, whether through education, awareness, or in rare cases like Pierogi's, direct technical action against the criminal operations themselves. The war against scammers continues every day, and each of us has a role to play in protecting ourselves, our families, and our communities from these predators who seek to exploit our trust and steal our hard-earned money. Thanks to heroes like Pierogi, we know that these criminals can be beaten at their own game,